Here are 50 ways to use the copper golem. From cannons to transportation to yoga class, it's all here. Starting first with a copper golem quarry. We're not just using these guys for sorting, because if we were to set up a copper chest here with TNT, have them activate it with a pressure plate here, then they can filter in even more into the chest through the dispenser, giving us a completely automated TNT system that even reloads with the help of this little guy. Thanks, pal. And we don't just have to use that for dropping TNT downwards, since we could also use this for TNT cannon operators. And if I head over here, if I were to summon in one of our copper golems, have it grab some more TNT from our oxidized chest, then as it walks up, it's gonna hit these pressure plates, activating into different amounts of dispensers on different ticks, giving us a TNT cannon that our village is unfortunately familiar with. But what's great about this too is that it's not even hurting our copper golem, because it's all getting dispensed into water and stuff. He's just completely fine. And it'll walk up at different places, filling in different amounts of TNT. And just imagine having one of these set up outside your friend's base. Not only do you hate them enough to build this, but you hate them enough to hire someone to do it for you. Or if you want something less destructive and a little bit more friendly, we can actually use these for custom NPCs. Since the way that we would do this is that we would just set up chests in different locations and essentially control their pathfinding to have them walk around and make your village look like it's come to life. Just something as simple as having a copper chest over here with some kind of block and then a regular chest with a hopper. You can keep them working just fine. And then, as you're hearing right there, we're dispensing the blocks that they're putting from this chest right back over to the original spot. So it's just a hopper pipeline, keeping all of those copper blocks into the system, throwing it up with a dispenser right here, and keeping them walking back and forth, doing their daily chores. And then if you wanted it to stop, you could just interrupt the cycle. Pretty cool. Oddly enough, these weren't actually added in with the trial chambers, which would have made sense considering how much copper was down there. So if you want to go and populate your trial chambers and give them a new kind of feel, you could add this. You could add this into the mix, and once you've cleared out the copper chambers, give you a completely safe way to have a lot friendlier of denizens walking around. Now, obviously, one of the flagship ways to use this is for an easy sorting system. And now, with the help of our shelves too, we could also incorporate these in to easily know where which item should go. So, okay, this is going to be our emeralds, diamonds, and amethyst chest, but because he's bringing over these, he's going to go and sort it into whatever chest has that same item. So he's got the wheat. Obviously, it's not going to fill into our materials chests. So while it is a little bit slower having to go and check each one individually, as soon as it finds it, it will sort it in to the wheat chest that we have here, giving it 16 wheat. So for a sorting system that uses absolutely zero hoppers or redstone, that's pretty cool. Or if you want to keep your hoppers with your sorting system, then we could do something a bit more complex here, where we have a proper copper golem hopper sorting system. So we've got our copper golems walking along the top here, keeping them aligned with this path here, which I gotta say, it looks a lot less humane, but it is definitely functional for whatever that's worth. And then if I were to input anything I want to these chests, giving it coarse, stir, the different things that we're seeing around here, concretes, all that, my copper golems will wake up, check the chest, and then bring it into the rest of our system. And here we go. We'll see them start to walk down the assembly line and sort things into the different chests. And obviously, by having multiple of them here, it's just going to go faster. And even more brilliant is that they don't have collision when they're walking through each other. So it's not even like adding extra copper golems is going to slow down our system. And then we combine it all with hoppers here, giving us the proper sorting all the way down here, which is awesome. Copper golems look a lot like wind-up toys, so we can put that into good use. And by laying them out in just the shelves that we're seeing here, it looks like we got all of our different toys on display for a toy store. And I really like this detail here of having the different copper golem statues as the mannequins that are standing out front. That's very fun. And then if you want your little Toy Story story to start, you can just throw down one of these guys and have it running around. Pretty cool. In normal survival, it's impossible for armor stands to hold our shields. So if we want a way for them to hold our shields, then we could use this by having the copper golem equip our shields with chests that they're not able to reach, giving us a new way to display our banners horizontally. And plus, I love that it holds it as the proper model as well. It's not just an item in their inventory. It's actually something that looks like it's displaying properly. That's so cool. Since copper golems treat the top of their head with no collision, it's actually possible to have this overlay with things like carpets, and now add new plants into our shrubbery boxes. And better still, if I were to take one of these down, plant it, and then right click through the different phases, I could also have its poses give us different kinds of positioning to the top of these. How does it look with moss carpet? That's what I'm curious about. Yeah, not bad. Or if we don't want to use them as the flowers, then we can combine them with our flowering pots to get a new kind of design. Since, as we're seeing here, by just laying out a flower pot interacting with their lightning rod top, then it actually blends together quite nicely into having not just the colors blend together, but also have the copper golems give a new kind of ornamental face to our flower pot design. I like this one. It looks like he's trying to balance it. Or we can mix this in with our machinery and have our copper golems look like parts of gears and different motors that we're using inside of our farmland. Look at this. So we've got a plower here, and then by having copper golems mix in with the different waxed oxidized copper trap doors, it blends nicely as the middle part of a spoke on the wheel. Yeah, it looks like pistons on the engine. That's a good point. Then if you're able to automate them like so, you could have them fire, and now the pistons on the engine have moved that way. Neat. Now, at first glance, it might be hard to see where the copper golems fill in here, but I think that's actually what's so beautiful about this, because by having the copper golems sit down like so, because we can plant them midair, it is actually possible to have our copper golems suspended like so and give ourselves a train suspension system. So while it is a little bit horrific to build a whole train in the back of one of these little guys, they don't seem to mind, so I think it works just fine. And much in the same way that we use them for the toy store design, as you can see here, by just giving them a base of a waxed oxidized copper block, they work really nicely as garden statues. And because we don't have proper garden gnomes to display, I think this is perfectly fine to have garden golems. So our copper golems look a little bit silly having to stand up like this, right? I mean, they're floating midair, but unless you're pinning them up like so, it's probably not actually blending in well to your build. But we can make tall copper golems by adding in armor stands that are wearing full copper gear, and particularly using different kinds of armor trims to give the copper trims onto the armor. We can have ourselves tall copper golems. Look at how cool this is. And hey, they also get to retain their arms, giving us the first time of ever having arms on an armor stand. So the way that you would build this out is that you would have the dispenser at the back here. You would take your copper golem statue, place it on top of our trapdoor down there, and then by having the armor stand in here, we could take that, use it with the dispenser, using the dispenser here on the second level block so that it places on top of our trapdoor, and then now we can go in and add in the rest of our armor. So it's a bit complicated, especially compared to using creative mode commands, but it is fully possible. And now we have our copper golem soldier. What we have set up is a copper golem showing off the different ways to do aerobics class to the rest of our copper golems. And I think this is so creative. Just the idea of having down little bits of wool for the different mats in the yoga class is awesome. And then you can just use the different poses for different kinds of moves in the class. This is my personal favorite. The sitting down, I pull that one a lot. Oh yeah, and then the candles for the water bottles. I didn't even notice. That's awesome. By linking several of our copper golem statues together, we can rotate them in different ways to give ourselves giant copper golem chains. And when you stand back, it looks really cool for keeping a pedestal like this alive. Definitely expensive, but also definitely regal. So I think it fits, especially being able to use the different oxidization states here mixed in. That's really neat. If not a little symbolic having to look at all the faces that you used to build up your empire. For build hacks, it's really cool to be able to place these two different shelves together, and then by just having the two mangrove shelves, we got ourselves a steel beam. And so if you want to go one step further, you could place down a couple of our copper golems sitting like so, and have that classic image of steel workers working on the scaffolding eating their lunch. I think that's a very fun design to have. Copper golem mech. And the way that we did this is just by using different amounts of copper golems for the limbs. Because if you have them sitting down like so, it looks like the feet. If you angle a couple in the arms like so, you can make it look like biceps. And then by having one sitting up at the top, it looks like whoever's piloting the mech down here. Awesome, awesome design. Also shocking how well it works with the acacia shelves. By placing these together with our bookshelves, we can have them look like the bookends inside of a giant library. But the best part of this whole thing is by mixing in different kinds of armor stands along the side like so, which, because they're just wearing different kinds of pants, give us the different book bindings to have in between our giant bookends. And all that is just invisible armor stands that are summoned into place, each wearing pants stacked along like so. In the past, we used things like sea pickles to align the items just right in the water stream, so they can go fast with the ice and still connect over all the hoppers. But it's also possible to do the same by using copper golems. And now copper golems, because we can align them in different ways, give us the perfect way to have a partial block spacer. And the way that you would do this is that you'd have the ice down the middle here, but you would keep it where it's still sorting over the top of them just barely, so the hoppers can connect it and pick them up all at that max speed. But the problem here is that you would want it to flow along the side of the wall to my right, because if you have it go off to the left as observer shows, with these guys it's just gonna go in between the middle here. Stepping inside here, we've got our copper golem snack bar. So I put my diamonds in, that filters into the copper chest, letting him know that he needs to go sort it, and then once the system detects payment, it'll pay out my cookie. Seems like kind of a raw deal. Hopefully it's a good cookie. If you're ever looking for a chest on the fly, then you should know so that you're able to get one just by spawning in a copper golem. Sure enough, if I take my carved pumpkin like so and place it on top of a copper block, then I not only score myself a friend, but I also score myself copper chest. So if you're low on wood, you can craft one of these without ever having to touch any wood blocks. If you're looking to add some sound design to your machinery, then you could do so by getting in some copper golems underneath the floorboards like so. And so by just hiding them down to here, and here we have it where it's actually visible underneath the copper grates, but if you wanted it just to be ambient, you could put some other block on top. Then not only do we get the metallic sounds of them walking around, but their occasional spinning and whirring will also add new things for details to your machinery. And if we added in the infinite loop chest system that we used for the custom NPCs in the past, then that would add in even more copper golem noises as they're opening up and moving items between the chests. Here we've got the lock for a door using entirely copper golems. So what we're supposed to do is check for different kinds of posing. So if we have this one sitting and this one in the star formation, then that'll activate just right, giving me access to my prized pufferfish. But the whole way that this works is that we're having a comparator come out, detecting what state that the copper golem's sitting at, and then it checks it against the different stage from the lectern here. So that one's set to page 2 for sitting, this one's set to page 4 for the star formation, and then when both of them confirm, it opens up our door, giving us the copper entrance. What we have here is a variable redstone clock, because by spacing out copper chests and regular chests at varying lengths, then we can use this to isolate our copper golem from different chests, giving us different amounts of redstone clocks. It's literally just based by how fast it walks. So it's an easy way to set up a hopper clock-like system without having to know how many items you need for it. Let's say you're down in the mines and you find yourself with another chest monster while you're down here. So if you need to go and sort that out, you could just keep the materials for a copper golem inside of your ender chest. So then at any point, you could deploy it and have your workforce on the go. So if you're starting to get a mess with your chest, that's fine. Just place it all inside this copper chest here and let it sort it out. That way you can keep mining while your friends end up doing all the work. All right, let's say we have a sorting system like this, where the copper golems will try to sort into every chest that they can if they find the matching item, but if not possible, they will actually flow it into an overflow chest. So copper golems will sort into chests containing items that match what they're holding, but if they can't, then they just dump that into an empty chest. So by using a hopper to drain our overflow chest like so, keeping it always empty, then it'll always dump all of the miscellaneous items into this chest, knowing where our etc. chest should always be, giving us a simple setup for where a hopper might actually start to choke. By combining up the power of our copper golems with the allay, we can not only reunite them from the mob vote, but we can also use the allays to drag items into where we want, spawning our loot like so, and then by using this to trigger the allays to drop off their things into our hopper system, that all filters into the copper golem's chest, and then it sorts it up like so. So as long as you're picking up loot, these allays will automatically sort it into where the copper golem needs to pick it up from. Very cool. While in a mob farm, they tend to drop a lot of loot and equipment that you're not going to be using anywhere else. An example of that would be our piglin farms. So if you want an alternative for that, we could take our copper golem to pick up the items and then smelt them down into nuggets, giving us more of the golden nuggets that we're looking for. You could even add in a crafter and have it automatically craft into ingots or blocks if you wanted to. But if you're only trying to collect the stackable items and not trying to have all these one slot only items filling up your chests, then you could have it pick it up, and then this comparator filters it out in exactly a way where as soon as we get any other items in that chest, then it'll actually start to peel it out of there, giving us the melted down items into this blast furnace. And that's not the only smelting that we could have with these guys, because with the power of this, we're gonna have our copper golem powered super smelter. So it takes all the items that we want to smelt up here, brings them along to this top chest, and then with the help of this hopper minecart, it'll all filter down into each of these furnaces equally, giving us the most speed while we're smelting up our stuff. He doesn't even care about the stairs. He'll just go and do the job in the fastest way possible. It's kind of commendable. And as long as you're keeping enough fuel for the system to work, you'll be just fine. Copper golems are pretty cute, but you're probably not thinking of them in a situation like this, where because the copper golem's eyes can glow in the dark, you can use this as a particularly spooky kind of decoration to have down in your caves. Look at how eerie its eyes are. Oh, mixed with the eye blossom down there, that is pretty freaky. And they do look at the player as you go, so you could have some really terrifying watching eyes down there. Considering that the copper golems will always pick up items in stacks of 16, you could use this as a way to split up your stacks from 64 into smaller items. We're gonna take those 16 over there, and because we have a hopper underneath each one of these, it'll always split it into 50-50, giving us 8 in each one. So in the past, we've been able to use chest boats like so to split it into 1 out of 9, or we could use this kind of redstone clock system to give out 18, but just having 16 like this, or split down into 8 like so, is not only a lot more functional for how Minecraft stacking works, but it's even simpler than it's ever been before. Not a lot of mobs have the exact same texture as different blocks. blocks, meaning that if we were to summon some of these in, you'll notice that the copper golems work particularly well for camouflage. And I'm sure that whenever the morph mod exists for these things, this would be particularly fun to go and run around and pretend to be the different copper golems hiding in different trial chambers. And while their eyes might be a dead giveaway, by having them face around the other way, it becomes a lot harder to notice. And also, it's an added building detail too. It's kind of like a copper stair of sorts coming out of these. Barrels now have a bigger use in our world than ever before. And one of the reasons for that is because our copper golems can interact with these barrels. So if you want precise control over where your items go, then by just mixing these in, we can make sure that they're only filtering into the chests while we get to use the barrels underneath, making it easier than ever to have places that we want to keep separate from the sorting system while still in the general area. And from the nicer uses for the copper golem to one of the meaner ones, because by just having all of the items filter from this chest at the top down to the copper chest below, we give an infinite loop of this copper golem having to go and put the items that it's sorting up here. Job well done. It goes and checks down and sees what there is to do, but unfortunately, there's always going to be more buckets of pufferfish to go through. Or even crueler yet, we could use this option using wind charges, because what'll happen is that if we got this copper golem in, it takes the items from its copper chest, and it'll try to bring it over to this chest, but all of the wind charges that we have getting activated every time that it walks over will keep it from ever being able to sort it into the chest. And all that's happening here is we just have redstone along the top from this, and that connects down to the redstone that we're getting from the pressure plates below. Ooh, I don't know if this one's any better. As the internet was quick to find out, it's possible to take the star pose of this copper golem and place it along and give yourself a bit of an extra torture here. Observer, if you'll join me for dinner here, we could have ourselves a copper golem waiter. Since what'll happen is that we're able to grab the items out of their hand while they're walking between different chests and essentially have a grab and go kind of eatery experience. There you go. And you can even add in extra ones to have even more waiters walking around the restaurant. Just right click, they drop their items and get back to their next shift. An autoplay jukebox. Since what'll happen is that our copper golem will take the music disc out of this chest, then place it into this one, having the hopper filter in our relic music disc like so, and then once the music stops, it filters right back up to the top, giving us a chance to listen to that track again. Now traditionally, we're not making item sorters underwater because the redstone just wouldn't mix to make it feasible. But now, because the copper golems work just the same underwater, albeit a bit slower, we can actually have a way to filter our chests down below. And while you're trading a bit of speed, you do get a lot more functionality. Plus, it's not like it's going to explode anytime soon, making this the safest item sorter that you could possibly make. Unlike the hopper systems that we're used to for item sorting, the copper golems can actually detect and sort specific NBT data about the items, which means that if I were to take a specific enchantment and put it in this chest, then the copper golem will go through each chest and only match it to the exact same enchantment. That's something we've never been able to do previously. And while currently this works best in Bedrock Edition, with the push that Mojang's making for parity, I could hope that we could see this in Java Edition as well. Here's how to use one copper golem to sabotage your friend's sorting system. So once we get a copper golem into the mix, we could have it completely ruin your friend's storage system just by placing down a secret other chest to collect up their stuff. And the way that you'd want to do this is by placing down another chest that's closer or closest to their copper chest. And hey, worth noting is that they also open up trap chests too. So if we get our copper golem in, it'll open up the trap chest and unbeknownst to it, ruin our friend's storage supply and leave its friend trapped in the process. That was really just a not efficient life. Whoa! Because both copper golems and our lightning rods will combine up like so, by placing down a couple of copper lightning rods like so, one facing downwards and the other one facing up towards the top, it blends perfectly to give ourselves a new design for a copper lightning rod. And then when we summon in our lightning, while the copper golems themselves might not work as lightning rods, this one certainly will, giving a unique design and a way to keep the oxidization off of both. By using a couple of sitting golems underneath green carpet like so, we can have them look like the different balls that you would see in a pool table. And then with some signs aligned like so, that gives you the pool cue that you can use for a proper pool table, which really goes to show you how far we've come for pool table design, considering that the original design that I used to see was a bunch of grass blocks lined with oak signs. It's definitely a far cry from that, and thankfully so. But hey, it's a lot harder to sink something into the pocket. Here we've got a copper golem maze experiment. Since if we were to take a copper golem into this system, have it open up our copper chest, and then we'll see how it passes pathfinds through this, finding the shortest possible area to go towards the regular chest that it's sorting into. And as far as mob AI goes, I think this has to be one of the smartest mobs that we've seen introduced yet, giving you a fun way to hint towards the player where's the correct way through the hedge maze. Almost like the assist mode in Mario Odyssey. It would give you an arrow showing where to go. As we'll soon find out, copper golems are affected by a boost of speed. As we'll see here, the trap chest will unlock, giving them a boost of speed potion through the dispenser, and now they'll sort even faster through your items. So if you're looking to kick them into high gear, you don't just need a tick sprint command, you can actually just do it with a little bit of swiftness too. Which begs the question, what does it look like with maximum swiftness? Whoa! Okay, I guess that really opens up. It doesn't even know where to go anymore. Copper buttons were unfortunately not added in with our copper golems, but we can make pretend that they were by having the top of its lightning rod head stick out through different blocks on top. So a transparent block like a trap door, like so, gives us a way to have these copper buttons aligned, giving pretty industrial rivets for our railway system. So we've got here is a play set, because if we were to take a copper golem, and due to the flower display interaction, they can render full block models on their head, giving us a way to have full blocks as entities that can now roam around. This hasn't been possible in the past. Even trying to do this on ourselves doesn't always render the full block properly. But now, by just summoning in a copper golem, and then by doing item replace entity at near type equals copper golem, we can change out, I'm assuming, armor head with a block that we want, like a grass block. Oh, nope. Well, that's funny too. Oh, so worth keeping in mind is that you have to change out the saddle slot for it to render properly. But once you get it into your world, it's pretty cool. Ah, here we go. So if your friend's someone who likes to build up with a lot of copper, then we could use this idea to take a whole bunch of carved pumpkins and turn their whole base into a whole bunch of copper golems and copper chests. The copper chests aren't so bad. Having that many people now living in your house might be a bit of a mess. And I think a particularly great way to do this would be going inside of a trial chamber, taking a stack of carved pumpkins and just completely ruining the ecosystem down there. With the ability to change any oxidation state into a copper golem, this really gives us a lot more options than just having it be the standard regular copper blocks that we could transform. And now it gets a bit laggy having that all there, so maybe only do this if your friend's got a good PC. What we've got here is a sky tram system. By connecting up a lead to our copper golem, and then having that lead connect to a boat with a saddled pig underneath, then what we could technically do is go ride that saddled pig and have the lead stay in place, letting us use a copper golem's chest pathfinding to connect us and have a sky tram system. This is hilarious, but awesome that it works entirely. And just because it's checking all of these different copper chests, it's never actually finding the one chest to go to, giving us a simple loop back and forth, even across something as precarious as copper bars like so. And you do want to make sure that the lead's connected to the boat, because otherwise it would pull this whole saddled pig out of here, and that becomes a real mess.
And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?